Actually, I'm looking for a Batman number 14.
That's a very serious book, man.
Only 5 in existence.
4, actually. I'm always looking out for the other 3. Look, you can't put the Superman number 77s with the 200s. They haven't even discovered red kryptonite yet. And you can't put the number 98s with the 300s. Laurie the Mars hasn't even been introduced.
Where the hell are you from? Krypton?
Phoenix, actually. But lucky me, we moved here.
This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1828, Retro Movie Review, Lost Boys. Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Ian Levinstein.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Chris Eberly. Happy Halloween, folks.
Happy Halloween. If there was any clip I was going to play at the beginning of this episode, it was going to be that one.
Pitch perfect, my friend.
Very well chosen.
Yep.
Yep, and welcome one and all to the show. And yep, it is indeed another retro movie review. As suggested by Mr. Eberly, we go back to the 80s with The Lost Boys. And boy, oh boy, what a movie we have to discuss here on today's show. Joel Schumacher at his finest. And we'll be going further in depth and in detail on our thoughts and opinions as we move forward here on today's spooky episode of Comic Geek Speak. All right, maybe not that spooky, maybe a little campy, but still,
Little, yeah.
Just a tad.
Well, but before we get there, as always, we are sponsored by you guys, the listeners, over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. And those of you who are patrons to either myself at patreon.com/comictiming or patreon.com/comicgeekspeak got themselves a little treat this week as you got to hear our next episode before everyone else. I went ahead and released what's going to be episode 1829, catching up with Comfort and Love and Adam Withers, New York style, directly to the Patreon for anyone who is a supporter. And this was a full hour and 20-minute episode that I recorded on Thursday at New York Comic Con, and it deserved its own episode. So I figured, all right, it's ready to go, and might as well give you guys a little bit of a treat there for the patrons. So anybody who is a patron will have the next week exclusivity of listening to that episode before it's launched here on the feed. So
Trick or treat.
Exactly, trick or treat, and definitely a treat, no trick on this one. So yeah, patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. We thank you so much for your continued support. All 118 of you at the moment. You guys are the best, and here's to you.
All right. Before we start, Halloween trivia. When did the term trick or treat start being used?
Give me
like a decade.
I have no idea.
I'll say the 1920s.
I'll go 1910s.
I'll take it even further back and say 1890s.
1920. 1920s.
Okay, there you go. Any idea how it started out, Shane, or is it just
No, that was just the trivia question we had at work today. The answer was 1920, and that's where it died.
All right, go figure. I did not know that.
Who brought Halloween to the States? France, Spain, England, or Ireland?
I would have thought Ireland.
I'm going to say Ireland.
Yeah, Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah, since it kind of evolved from old Druid customs.
Yep, Celtic and Druid.
Makes sense to me.
My peoples.
Well, thank you so much for suggesting this one, Chris, because I before today, I had only actually watched this movie once, and it was a couple of
Really?
years ago.
Blows my mind.
I continue to point out that a lot of the 80s I was too young for at the time, and I just
Granted,
never
yep.
got around for it. And then, as more and more friends of mine, poked and prodded me and were like, come on, do it. I'm like, all right, fine. Let me go back and, find some of those seminal 80s movies that I haven't actually checked out yet. And that was me about 5 or 6 years ago. And then I sat down and watched it again last night. And I think it might very well wind up being a Halloween tradition for me at this point, because I adore this movie. I really do.
I'll tell you, I mean, I don't like growing old, but I cannot imagine growing up at any other time than the 80s. All these absolutely spectacular movies all throughout the 80s.
Yep.
From stuff like Lost Boys to romantic comedies and horror and off-the-wall sci-fi. There just is nothing better.
Speaking of horror, Shane, on Halloween, I just added to my digital library and haven't watched it in years. Kurt Russell and the Thing.
I think now that one I've only seen once or
I'm
so.
looking forward to watching it again. It's been a long time.
Nice. Well, this is yet another movie also, by the way, that, since we do discuss doing this a lot on the show, this is another movie that you can get via the disc to digital program at Vudu. So,
nice.
Because at the moment, it is not available for free streaming anywhere that I'm aware of. And otherwise, it is a rental.
But we should point out, Ian, and I'm sorry to interject because I've become such a voodoo fiend.
Mhm.
They have sales every week.
They do, yes.
And I've seen this on sale for $6 or $7.
Oh,
at
definitely.
Vudu.
And
So-
Vudu also is now owned by Fandango. So there's,
I noticed that. Yeah.
There's even more integration into, like, for instance, my Roku. I can
Finally.
I can access my Vudu library directly from the home screen now. Like, it's even further integration with that.
Finally on my Fire Stick as well, because I have some James Bond, Roger Moore movies on there that I could never access other
Nice.
than my tablets.
Right.
Octopussy.
Right, because MGM is not
That's
part
one
of
of them.
MGM is not part of Movies Anywhere. So yes, I completely understand that. The other thing is with Vudu, I was able to get around the fact that as of like October, it's not Lost Boys related. For some reason, the movie Wet Hot American Summer is not available streaming anywhere.
What?
Like for rent, for buy, for free streaming. It was on Peacock for a while. It was even on Netflix for a while. And at the moment, even when you go to rent it on like iTunes or Amazon, it shows not available. But it was still available disc to digital. I was able to find the UPC online, scan it, and then it went into my Vudu as purchased for $2, and now it's available for me on Amazon and all the other services via Movies Anywhere. So that was my workaround for getting that.
So you scan the UPC code, pay $2, and you get your movie digitally.
Yep, basically, yeah. You use your app on Vudu, and then just pull up something like DVDUPC.com on your computer. And find the one that has the highest amount of votes, and then you get around the system. You can't say that it's legal or not, because frankly, you're still using their service. Like there's nothing around it, and they'll still check to make sure you're in your own home, so you can't do it at like a Walmart.
I've got 1,000. Well, I just didn't say that. I have tons of DVDs, and I know I have Lost Boys down there with the UPC on the back that I could easily scan.
Oh yeah, yep, definitely. So go figure on that one.
Interesting.
Yep. Well, I'd love to get the rest of your folks' take on it. Murd, what'd you think of Lost Boys?
Well, I've seen the movie one fewer time than you have, Ian. At one. Yes, I had hoped to scrounge up a VHS tape of this because I have several VHS tapes from Shane's old collection at home, and I thought Lost Boys might have been one of them, since you must have owned this on VHS at some point.
Oh,
in your
I
life,
did
Shane.
at some point, yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately I couldn't find it, so I ended up paying $3.99 via Amazon Prime and watched it last night. And, it's this. I always end up being the virgin sacrifice when we do these. Murd, haven't seen it. This is my first time. All these 80s classics that I'm coming to so late in life, just because we didn't have cable when I was growing up, and also I was kind of a squeamish kid, I guess, in some respects. I would have been 8 years old when this thing was in theaters, and I would not have been ready for it, really, or maybe I would have, really, because as I was watching it, asking for first impression here, it was a very enjoyable movie, I thought. A little insubstantial, but enjoyable. Very stylishly made. I think Joel Schumacher and his compatriots did a good job of, well, for one thing, just immersing themselves in the styles and fads of its day. It's what I would call a
Oh, yeah.
high 80s movie,
Mhm.
by which I don't mean high culture or even high
High
quality.
concept
necessarily,
80s
but
film.
Yeah.
just a high level of engagement with the style and substance of the decade in which it was made. Yes, it was also made in 1987, which is like what I consider the core of the decade, 1985 through 87.
Yeah, anybody who wants to see how core 80s it is and is watching the video, like, all you got to do is look at those haircuts. Enough said.
Yep.
Whoa. Yeah, so there was that dimension to enjoy, certainly. And my favorite scenes were the ones that were on the boardwalk, where Schumacher puts all these different segments of 80s youth subculture on display. And, they're presented as kind of a like you're down among the dead men sort of thing. Like this is Transylvania, and here are the spooks and monsters that you're supposed to be fearing. Ironically.
Yeah.
But yeah, and plus, being a beach town kid myself, I responded to the boardwalk setting. I thought this must have played very well on the pier theaters in, say, Wildwood, New Jersey, or Ocean City, Maryland, or New Jersey, or even down as far as Myrtle Beach. It definitely it plays into that culture well. I can just imagine people in 1987 going to see this movie in the summer of 1987 in Wildwood, and it would have been the perfect backdrop.
Yeah.
It's not exactly what I was expecting, just based on the reputation that not even really a reputation, my own preconceptions of it, the reputation I assigned to it mentally after hearing my fellow geeks talk about it for years. I kind of thought that maybe we'd have vampires that were a little bit, more sophisticated and more sympathetic. I thought maybe the major conflict in the movie would be between different factions of vampires. I thought maybe I understood that there were some scenes in a comic book shop. I thought maybe some of the vampires were comic book geeks. But no, it turns out that the vampires are just your standard issue interchangeable 80s movie beach bullies, but vampires, and they're just evil and monsters that need to be destroyed. And underneath all of it, underneath like the triple thick gloss that Schulmacher and company applied to this, it is a good looking movie and it's a fun ride, but at a certain point in the movie, it occurred to me to think to myself, this is really very much like a kid's movie.
Yeah.
It's like Fright Night meets The Goonies.
Yep.
It's kind of appropriate considering Richard Donner's involvement. And, having looked it up on Wikipedia earlier today, I discovered that my first impression was pretty spot on, because the original concept was for this to be even more like The Goonies than it was. Like the vampire characters and Michael, the older brother, were supposed to be like 13-year-olds. And Sam and the Frog Brothers were supposed to be like 8.
Yep.
And then Schumacher came on, and he decided he wanted the thing to be older and sexier. And so he hired older actors and had a little bit of a rewrite on the script, and we ended up with the movie we got. But still, despite the veneer that was applied to it, it still comes through as kind of a kid's adventure movie. It's basically the older, oversexed, emotionally distant older brother of the Monster Squad. It's a bunch of kids trying to kill the bad monsters that are trying to recruit Sam's big brother and seduce his mom. So in a way, in kind of a shallow psychoanalytical way, it's dealing with the issues and anxieties of childhood, and so the whole Peter Pan connection does shine through. I'm glad that the filmmakers didn't hit us too hard on the head with the parallels with the mythos of Peter Pan and Never Never Land, but it's still there if you look for it, and so there's that to enjoy. And I, like the rest of us, I'm sure, really enjoyed the scenes in the comic book shop, because a comic book shop on a beach boardwalk, these places exist even to this day. They're not as common as they used to be, but and I just wanted to climb through the screen and just harvest all those issues of Brave and the Bold DC Comics Presents that were hanging there at 1987 prices.
Right.
If only. So yeah, it was a fun viewing experience. I found it eminently accessible. I was hoping for something a little bit more like Neil Gaiman or Anne Rice. What we got is more Jeff Loeb, but that's fine. I can kind of understand why it's become the classic of its generation that it has.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Yep.
Murd, when you say about pulling the stuff off of the comic shelves, all I hear is Professor Farnsworth. A man can dream. A man can dream.
Well,
I'll use my thing longer.
I'm reminded a little bit actually of specifically a comic shop that I went to when I was living in Seattle for the short time. At Pike Place, there was a comic book shop right there in Pike Place, where if you go down to the second floor, I don't know if it's still there, but it was there when I was there, and it was as much a hobby shop as it was a comic shop, but it very much had a similar vibe to that, like the one where, like, you know, you're not exactly looking for a comic shop, and when you find it, it has that like old school 80s comic shop feel and personality to it.
Nice.
And I completely dug discovering that when I went and toured the place. It was good times. Chris.
First of all, Murd, I was looking forward to that critique all day, and as always, you do not disappoint, my friend.
Very happy to hear it, Chris.
So I was telling Shane before we started recording, I was thinking today of all the movies that have influenced me in my life. I have to say, no movie has influenced the course of my life more, as silly as this sounds, than The Lost Boys.
It's quite a
So, a couple things here. First of all, I remember, so I was how old was I? 87. So I was 14, but I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it maybe. Shane, how long did it take to movies to go to videotape back then?
Usually a year to get on HBO. So
okay,
it came out in 87. Probably by 88, it was on.
All right. So I saw
Summer of
it.
88.
I'm pretty sure I saw it on videotape. So, you know, 6 months to a year later. So let's say I was 14 or 15. So
Yeah.
the movie hit all the right buttons for me and where I was in my life at that time. So I always loved monster films. I was always fascinated with vampires, even as, you know, a kid. Like I grew up watching like the Frank Langella Dracula, loved that and all that. So I was already, you know, thrilled with that. Then to have a movie where the main characters are hanging out at points in a comic book store. And by this point in the 80s, I was going to comic shops. I discovered them earlier in the decade. So I was familiar with that world. And I grew up in New Jersey, and like Murd, I spent every summer going down to the boardwalks, Seaside particularly, but also like, you know, Wildwood and Point Pleasant and so forth. So I already, as a kid, I already loved that world. Now, granted, this was filmed in California, but that easily could have been a New Jersey boardwalk setting, easily.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
So you had all these elements, and I was totally mesmerized with this movie because I saw myself in it, in a sense. As I mean, I wouldn't be wearing Corey Haim's really 80s like long coat and the I mean, I had my own fashion challenges in the 80s, of course, because, you know, it was that kind of decade, but that's a whole nother discussion. But I just saw myself in the movie and I completely fell in love with it. And as the years passed, as I got older, I would watch it all the time. You could ask Danielle, and when I had Wild Pig Comics, the movie was on at least once a week, to the point where she just got so sick of it because I was always playing it. Because as I got older, I realized, okay, this movie is impacting me in some ways because in college, throughout college, I worked in a video store, so I knew that world, and the movie sunk in there. And seeing those kids in the comic shop, I was like, I want to be in that environment all the time. How cool is that? There's a comic shop on the boardwalk. Right. And when I decided in the 1990s, I was going to work towards opening my own comic store, this movie was definitely, there was no question, it was whispering in my ear in a sense that I really wanted to have that environment. I mean, I knew I couldn't have a comic book store at the boardwalk because the rents are just insane. It wouldn't be possible. But it's something I wanted to do. And just the whole atmosphere of the film just always stayed with me. And when I was working in the video store, I was very conscious of the fact, oh yeah, this is like that, because I started working in video stores in 1993 in college.
Wow.
So, and they were still like what you saw in the movie, basically.
Right.
At that point. And so that really stayed with me. And, you know, I worked in video stores for several years. And then of course, when I got my business in 99 and went from there, the movie was always there in my head. And I'd have it on all the time because it's so registered with me and stayed with me as I was getting older. And plus, when I look back at it now as a middle-aged person, I appreciate it in even further ways. First of all, the actors they got to play the adults are all great actors. Like Diane Wiest is a tremendous actor who's been, won Oscars. The late great Edward Herrmann as the head of the vampire, family. Great actor. Bernard User's the grandfather. That's the kind of grandfather I want to be if I ever have grandchildren.
Wasn't he in a TV show loosely about Merlin?
I don't know, possibly. Wouldn't surprise me.
Sticks in my craw from the 80s.
Yeah, but it and I like Murd was saying, it so captures the vibe of that period. Murd, I couldn't agree more. 85 to 87, that's like at the heart of that decade for me.
One thing about living in Santa Clara, I could never stomach all the damn vampires.
And when they're going through, Schumacher does a wonderful job, and Murd was alluding to this, in establishing the world in those opening scenes at the boardwalk. And like Murd said, because it's fun, but it's also kind of sinister. And, you see all like the different freakish like subcultures that are there. And I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I used to have that haircut. And, I had Kiefer Sutherland's jacket at one point, like, cause I wore all kinds of wacky clothes when I was a teenager. I had like half my head shaved and hair done to my chin and all kinds of silliness, fingerless gloves and so forth. So movies like this really influenced me in a lot of ways, for better or worse. But Murd, I couldn't agree more that you really nailed how he used the setting of the boardwalk to really create the whole environment in the world. And we'll talk later about, the concert on the boardwalk, which demands our attention as soon as possible, because that is consummate 1980s.
Oh my God.
There. So, but that's my initial thoughts.
And Shane.
So I remember seeing the advertisements on the TV, commercials for it, and really intrigued by just the comic book little snippets that you got. I know I saw it. I'm 99% sure I saw it on HBO first. I don't think we rented it on a VHS tape. I bought one then later, I'm sure, because I watched it 1,000 times between HBO and moving out of the house. I absolutely thought it was just a load of fun. I too have always been intrigued by vampires. I find them a fascinating creature. So I like almost any vampire story. I mean, when you're talking about Underworld or Anne Rice novels, it doesn't matter how silly or how outrageous or how serious it is. I just love the idea of a vampire, and it fascinates me. And then this movie, while very predictable and very much an 80s movie, still seeing it like 15, 16 years old, there are still twists in it that I didn't expect. And then there's things that I did call, like I can remember thinking at one point when the head vampire walks into or wants to get into the house because he has a date with the mother. And he says to one of the boys, well, I can't come in until you invite me. And right there, I'm thinking, well, that's a bit odd. I get what he's saying because it's the man of the house, but I'm pretty sure he's not going to be who he says he is. And then being that young, kind of forget about it till it happens in the movie. And then you realize, oh my God, he is the head vampire. So that's a neat little twist. But that best line at the end of not all the damn vampires, that just absolutely slayed me. And I really thought at that point we were going to get a sequel that explained that and got more adventures out of these characters.
Well,
Maybe Grandpa as a young man clashing with the vampires in Santa Carla.
Yeah, something.
There was going to be a sequel called Lost Girls. That was originally planned, where Kiefer Sutherland's character, you never actually see him die.
Right.
So he was going to wind up actually coming back because all the other vampires turn to dust, and yet you clearly see he does not. So that was supposed to be explained as him, somehow surviving, and then he sires a new vampire, and then goes from there, yada yada yada. And we were supposed to get more of the lore, but it was never greenlit. And then they didn't make another one until years and years and years later, direct to video, and it became the campy, even campier.
I think there's a third one too, isn't there?
I think there is, yeah.
And I haven't seen either of them, and I desperately kind of want to, just to be able to say I've watched it. I know that they're probably not near as good. I know Corey Feldman is involved. I know that he was trying to get Corey Haim involved before he passed away. But just fantastic story and a fun movie. Like you say, I loved going to the boardwalk as a kid. When we were on family vacations, it was Wildwood, New Jersey, Ocean City, New Jersey. And during the week that we'd stay at either place, we would travel to all the surrounding areas, Avalon and Stone Harbor and whatnot, and visit. I mean, I know when I was a kid, I was in Murd's shop 1,000 times, but never ever knew it.
Fantastic.
But I would also go to like all those comic shops because they were on the boardwalk. They still are. There's one in Ocean City, New Jersey. There's one in Bethany Beach, Delaware. But they looked back then, the ones on the boardwalk looked like what you're seeing in this movie. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. And we'd go in and grab a couple comics cheap and be able to read them on the boardwalk or in the hotel room. Part of when you were talking, Chris, I was quickly trying to find on my phone, because as soon as you said something about the boardwalk and the comic shops, it hit me that I was talking to my sister a couple months ago, and she actually helped me determine which store, where it was, and actually gave me the address, and I had it wrote down somewhere, but I can't find it, to where I first bought those issues of Justice League back in the 80s, the first annual, that was all surrounding the Gray Man story that really got me hooked on that era of Justice League and really comic book collecting. But it was all because I was at the beach on vacation, going to the boardwalk, going to the beach, hanging out, at the arcades, whatever. So that I was frantically trying to find it. So that's all the cool stuff that I can kind of remember and really relate to when I watch this movie, is not only about the vampire horror movie aspect of it, but as silly as it sounds, a big chunk of my childhood looking like this when I was at the boardwalk as a kid.
And that's a great point too, Shane, because when you think about comic shops in the 80s that we experienced, they were kind of like one step from flea markets in a way.
Yeah.
In that you I mean, and in some ways that was good, in other ways it wasn't, but depending on who you're dealing with as a proprietor and so forth. But because some of them are like right out of The Simpsons, but it hadn't, that industry hadn't formed into kind of like what became later with all the other stuff people were selling and the 90s and the gloss and all that. So there was, you would go into a store back in the 80s and you'd find a lot of back issues, for example. And there weren't a lot of trade paperbacks yet, so you wouldn't see anything like that. It was primarily, back issues and like, the first T-shirts and posters and things like that. So the movie, I think, really captures that. Plus, I love the fact that it's a little ambiguous. Are those their stoned hippie parents in the corner who are letting them run
that's
the
what
shop?
I always took it as.
Yeah,
that's exactly
Who
what
they
I
show
took
a
that
couple
as.
times in the same position.
Yeah.
Movie.
Well, and
Fantastic.
think about this with these comic shops at this time. I mean, I know this is sort of a tangent away from the movie itself, but at this time, the comic shop that I regulared was a regular corner storefront. He had the whole width of the store in the front was long boxes, at least 2 rows of them, like tables and floors, all 50-cent bins. And then my aunt got me a gift for Christmas one year, and it was a $20 gift certificate to the store. And over Christmas that year, from Christmas to New Year's, he had a half off sale of all back issues. So I went in there and I spent $20 at quarter a piece for
That goes a long way in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. I came home with a plethora of comics. It was just fantastic.
So and by the way, the name of the original comic shop, I'm trying to find it here. The original location closed, but there is still a version of it that exists. I'm trying to get the actual name of the place right now.
The store in the movie.
Yeah, the store in the movie. Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I did find the one in Seattle that I was thinking of, and that's actually Golden Age Collectibles, and that is quite possibly the oldest comic shop in the world.
Wow.
It opened back in 1961.
Get out.
That's old. That's older than Ides. I think Ides was 72, I believe.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
wow, 1961.
Yep.
Holy mackerel.
Indeed. Yep.
And I mean, this movie was just a fun adventure. It was brothers caring for each other, looking out for each other. I gravitated towards grandfather figures because I lost both of my grandfathers, one when I was 5, one when I was 7 or 8. So I never really had a grandfather in my life. So if there is a grandfather influenced in a movie or a TV show, I kind of gravitated towards that and enjoyed it a little bit more. I got a kick out of the quirky things that he did with his grandsons, like talking about going for a ride and gets in the car and goes, "That's about as close to town as I like to get," shuts it off. And Corey Haim's going to stand there going, "What's going on?"
There's a lot of bad elements around here.
Yep.
it's just a fun movie from start to finish, let alone the adventure that happens in between. And I love the fact that the first, what is it, third or half of the movie, you don't really see the vampires. You see what they do, you hear them, but you don't see what they look like until later. And that was, to me, that was also a great way to present them, to keep the mystery, to keep the creepiness about it.
And when they do show them, as Kiefer Sutherland goes, "You must feed," and they show them attack those punk rockers who are around the fire. That scene is really graphic.
Oh yeah,
Like they show them like biting into one guy's skull and blood's flying, and then like throwing bodies on the fire. I remember as a kid, I was like, "Holy mackerel!" Like that.
Yeah.
Like that. I think it was a great job, Shane, because it was very jarring. Because up to that point, like you said, like you'd see people get picked up by them, like the security guard with his door, but you don't actually see them attacking anybody. And when they really show you how like
brutal,
viscerally bloody it is, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they're really vampires. And this isn't like, Dracula, like in an old movie, seducing a woman, and she like falls into his arms, and he like just like erotically. No, they're like tearing these people apart.
Yeah.
So
and
I think it was very effective.
I think they did a great job also, because you have them going on the boardwalk, going into their master's store and kind of wreaking a little bit of teenage angsty havoc, and him kind of ordering them out. And you think, oh, well, that, that's normal, but you never think that he's going to be the one that's responsible for them until later. And just laying little snippets down along the way that just, you can come to that conclusion if you're paying attention, and it's not hard, but it's still cool to see once it happens. And then the reaction of the family when it happens, like their betrayal for somebody that they were kind of trusting into their house. I don't know. It was just a fun movie, just a fantastic adventure.
My one thing, though, is that I feel like their vampire lore kind of went all over the place at times, especially with
they were borrowing from all over the place.
Well, specifically the, well, if I'm invited in, then all my powers go away. And then, okay, wait, so you can just go into a place without being invited and you have all your powers? Like, usually it's you're either invited in or you can't go in to a house. But that did not seem to be the case in this movie. And that was a little bit jarring. So he can eat garlic as long as you say, "Sure, come on in." That was kind of a bit much for me. But I understood what they were still trying to pull off.
And some of it I don't know, especially the garlic part, because I was thinking about that when the Frog Brothers are in the bathroom fighting the one vampire, long dark black hair, and they're shooting him with the water pistols.
Right.
And he just says, "Garlic doesn't work that way, boys."
Yeah.
And then the holy water takes over and does its job.
Right.
But I'm not sure about the garlic part, but I get what you're saying, with him being invited in and kind of being okay without anything happening to him as a result of that.
Because they even threw water onto him, which I assume was holy water, and he didn't burst into flames. So
right. So he's kind of protected by being invited in. Right.
Yeah.
I did want to say, Ian, can I show something on my screen?
Yeah, let me give you the host rights real quick.
Oh, Shane is giving you the power.
And Atlantis Fantasy World, Fantasyland is the name of the shop, by the way.
Oh,
Atlantis Fantasyland?
Yes, I believe that is.
That's tremendous.
Yeah,
that's
perfect. Okay, here we are. Gonna make you host right now. So the thing is with that shop is that, as I said, they moved Atlantis Fantasy World. Sorry, Atlantis Fantasy World. They moved away from the boardwalk years ago, but they still have on display the old the old comic book. That they will let you look at that is signed by the entire cast, because that comic doesn't actually exist.
The vampire prop comic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
superb.
They still have that on display along with a couple of other Lost Boys props and what have you when you go to the new location of the store.
So here's the show I was thinking of.
Look at that.
Oh wow!
It's a fantastically campy 80s show. I mean, it was like 1980. Let me see here.
Mr. Merlin. Mr. Merlin.
Yep. 81
to 82, one season.
Exactly the year I would have guessed. I think I actually remember it.
Yep. Oh, wow. It's just it's something that has always stuck in my head since day one of watching it.
That's crazy, honestly. Like, and it's funny how things stick in your head that way too, because I mean, I still remember very well My Secret Identity.
Sure.
Jerry O'Connell's show.
But that was right after Superboy.
Right. But if I try to tell that to normal non-nerds, they're like, what the hell is that? Like the first thing I remember Jerry O'Connell from is, and they'll name some movie. I'm like, no, I remember Sliders and I remember My Secret Identity long before I even saw Stand By Me. So that's
do you remember the song?
You'll never guess my secret
identity.
Oh yeah, yep. I used to watch it at my dad's store on Sundays while we were there. Yep, that was good time.
Absolutely.
Ian, quickly, what town in California is that store in?
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz. Okay.
Yep, they are actually in Santa Cruz.
Yeah, I know they changed the name of the town slightly for the movie. So
right. And mind you, the town of Santa Cruz was not happy to have the murder capital of the world come back, because that was actually a reference to the serial killer murders that happened in Santa Cruz earlier on.
Really?
Yeah, in the Lifetime. Like it had that moniker that they had, finally gotten rid of. And then here's Lost Boys, and then it's back. So
yeah.
So let's talk about the saxophone player.
Oh my God, yes.
Between this movie and Buckaroo Banzai, I must conclude that the 80s truly were the golden age of shirtless men playing saxophone.
Wait, men who oiled themselves up. So Tim Capello, because I did some background a while ago reading about him. So as I anticipated, because what he was wearing, he did work for Tina Turner. And if you look at Tina Turner videos in the 80s, he fits right in.
Oh yeah.
With like the body suit and the chains. But every time I see that scene, because it's so over the top cornball 80s pop.
Yep.
Yeah.
And his gyrations and like, the way he's moving the mic stand and like, I nearly piss myself watching that scene now, because it's so evocative of a certain type of really bad music from the 1980s that I still have like a soft spot for. But and like you're seeing like people like headbang to this in the crowd. No one would ever headbang to that music ever. But it's so perfect in the whole world they've created for this movie that you have this muscled guy in a ponytail, like gyrating his pelvis, playing the saxophone with like flames behind him. Like I'm howling with laughter now when I see that. It's just tremendous. How do you guys react to that scene?
Oh, I thought it was exactly fitting the times. I mean, it's what you saw on MTV in certain ways.
And honestly, it
the pink-haired lady in the background.
Yeah. It put an SNL sketch, one of my favorite SNL sketches, into a new light, because when John Hamm hosted SNL a couple of years ago, there was a digital short called Sergio, where if you would say the word Sergio, this shirtless saxophone man played by John Hamm would show up and start playing the sax wildly and then go Sergio and then walk off. And that is basically him to a
yeah. Now the woman that's in that picture behind her.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is, and I don't even know if we'd ever find out or see, but she kind of reminds me of the one girl in Weird Science, the one woman in Weird Science that she created to get Anthony Michael Hall and to get Gary and Wyatt to protect their guests as the biker gang came barreling through the house. Mm-hmm. And she looks like one of the invaders of the house to
Very
me.
possible.
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of the same time period.
All I know is I'm looking at, the essence of Pat Benatar, like Elton John 80s I'm Still Standing videos. Like, man, that he just is right in the moment there with that leotard and like the cod piece and
yep.
It is breathtaking.
And it's just so, I mean, as said, it's so evocative of the times and so evocative of like rando boardwalk concerts. Like I wore my Coney Island shirt today for a reason, because like that's the closest to boardwalk experiences I've got. And I've had, random concerts just break out in the middle of Coney Island, whether scheduled or not, and everybody gathers around. And sometimes there is a shirtless man playing an instrument of some kind, whether it be planned or not. And it's all part of the fun. That's all part of being where you are, and whether it be New Jersey or California or Coney Island, it's just part of the event.
And even things like Michael on the boardwalk going to the leather shop to buy a jacket to impress Jamie Gertz, who he sees as she just walks by, like all this crazy stuff that probably happened on the boardwalk over summers if people hung out there, lived there.
And the female punker selling him to him is like, yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
You look so great in this. Please give us money.
Murd, what do you think of Mr. Capello?
Breathtaking, yes. I needed to catch my breath from the laughter. Because, yes, it is the soul of over-the-top 80s power pop, yes.
Yeah.
And it is the MTV generation on full display here.
And I bring up a picture of Michael as well. Most of the people in this movie, I could actually believe were around the age that they were supposed to be. And he looks 35. I don't know whether or not he actually is or not, but boy, oh boy, did he look older than I, was imagining in my head by the second time that I watched this.
When was this? 87?
Yeah, 87.
Right.
Yeah.
He would have been 21.
Wow. That is an old looking 21-year-old man. That's
June 17th, 1966.
Okay. Wow.
And he went on to become a great actor, Jason Patrick.
Oh yeah.
He's very selective in the roles he takes, but he's been in some superb films.
I had found on YouTube a fascinating interview with him and was it Kiefer Sutherland? I want to say it was Kiefer Sutherland when they were at either a movie house showing Lost Boys or some movie festival featuring Lost Boys for an anniversary or something. It had to be half hour, an hour long. And it was really interesting to listen to them talk about their time making the movie. It was a lot of fun.
Shane, as I mentioned to you a while ago on who played Lex Luthor in Smallville?
Michael Rosenbaum. Yeah.
He has a podcast.
Yeah, he's got some
Inside
great
of
stuff
You.
on it.
And he had the two of them come on it. It's superb, and they talk all about because they're still friends, Sutherland and Jason Patrick, and they talk about their experiences on the film. It's a really great interview where they talk about their whole careers, but they talk about that movie in particular. So,
the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm sure you guys may have realized this, but father and both sons have all played vampires. The Sutherland clan have all played vampires,
right?
Because Papa Sutherland in the Buffy movie, Kiefer in Lost Boys, and then his brother played one of the lead vampires in the sequel that came out direct to video.
Oh, get out!
And by the way, Jason Patrick's father is the great playwright and actor Jason Miller, who was in The Exorcist.
Oh wow!
Who played the main character, the priest.
I didn't know that.
Father Karras. Yeah.
Wow. Go figure.
So there's a whole host of ties there.
Well, and there's not quite as close ties to that, but it did give me a sense of awe when I realized not too terribly long ago in the past that Bill from Bill and Ted's was one of the vampires.
Oh yeah,
Alex Winter.
I didn't know that for years and years.
Well, he doesn't really talk that much during the movie. Like
no,
he has like 2 or 3 lines, and then that's about it.
But he always looked familiar to me, and it was just one of those things where I'm sure I looked it up on like who these people were, but just never looked at his profile or something on the internet to realize, oh my God, that's Bill.
And let's talk about for a minute. I want to spend some time on Kiefer Sutherland's performance, because from the first time I saw the movie through the present day, I can't take my eyes off how wonderfully, deliciously villainous he is in this film.
Oh, he's terrific.
And so, for example,
worms.
In the we'll get to that in a minute. But in the opening scene when he's on the carousel and he's moving in between the horses like a predator, right, on the prowl, and like he goes for that one beach girl, and when the beach girl's boyfriend is trying to defend her, and he puts his hand on the guy's jaw, And you can see that it could easily kill him if he wanted to. Like the guy, you can see the panic in the guy's eyes because he knows he can't get his hand off his face. But then he lets the guard hold him, and you're like, oh, he's letting that happen basically. And then of course they get him later. But when when they go into the caved-in hotel from the earthquake from 1906, and he's trying to to essentially seduce Michael into their cult essentially. But one of my favorite moments of pure delicious villainy, Chinese, good choice. And just the way he delivers those lines as they bring in the takeout, and he's so in command of his domain and his world, and he's such a great villain. Like he's so captured. Like he clearly got what that role was supposed to be, and because you can tell that he likes Michael, and he sees there's a strength in Michael that he wants in his group. But he's also willing to kill him if he has to. But I love his performance in the film. It's such a delight.
He's terrific, and he just it's weirdly like natural and campy at the same time.
Yes, well put, sir.
Which is a lot of head, like quote unquote head vampires act that way. I mean, obviously he's not the head vampire of the movie, but that is something that happens a lot, and especially with the "Are you liking your maggots?" and
worms, you're eating worms, Michael.
Worms. Of course, I immediately went to Family Guy. You're eating hair, but every single bit of it worked great, and then the rest of the gang too. Like even though they're just sort of like side characters for the most part.
Oh, they're great visuals though.
They're terrific visuals, and I like the vampire makeup in this a lot.
It's simplistically terrifying.
Yes.
And
definitely.
when they go to the railroad bridge, and they're all very cavalier about just jumping off. And I love how all throughout Kiefer Sutherland's character is constantly trying to get Michael to jump off the bridge. He's like, you're one of us. It just they kind of bring in like the whole like stereotypical like teen peer pressure concept of it. Like he's new in town, he doesn't know anybody. He's really attracted to this girl, but she's with like this alpha male, so to speak, and he's kind of trying to fit in, even though he's a little like that's all really well done. And also, go ahead.
Well, to add to Michael's plight, all the things that happen as a result of this are what you could consider as typical teenage issues or young adult issues. If you move, if you're out of your element, if you get with the wrong crowd
some
right
dumb
away.
choices to try to fit in.
So he's tired all the time. He looks a little bit run down. Maybe he's doing some drugs. It's all explainable without going to this route.
And that's why, Shane, when Diane Wiest, who's wonderful in everything she's in, but when she's like, hey, can we talk? Like she sees that there's something going on with him. She just thinks it's a girl, like the things you're talking about, right?
Are we still friends?
Yeah, exactly. That would happen in the real world. Yep. Which only makes her realization, like, what the hell is going on here when there's a supernatural element. But I think they did a good job of you really believe her bond with her sons. Mm-hmm. Like when they're driving in the car and they're joking about the radio. And I love how she has Sam give food to the two kids scrounging in the dumpster. Mm-hmm. Right there, her character right away. Like just that one moment. Oh, she's really nice, like kind of hippie, generous person. Yep. But her character is really well established just in those moments. Like you really know what kind of mother she is. And we all have known people like that.
Sure.
As friends or relatives, wherever they might be, but she's just perfect.
Now, I'd love to know where she grew up, though, because if that's where her dad lives now, where did she grow up? How long has he been there? Because he obviously knows there's vampires there, and he's been around. I mean, his whole property is filled with stuff that wasn't put there overnight.
maybe
like his anti-vampire steaks.
One of the reasons that last line about all the damn vampires is so damn chilling is because clearly he's known that these murderous supernatural bloodsuckers are in this town all along. He knows the infestation happens, and yet he allows his daughter and grandchildren to come and live in and doesn't so much as give them a word of warning.
Well,
Good
I
point,
mean,
Bird.
well, because he's too busy, having sexual relations with
He's courting.
With the Widow Johnson.
The Widow
Yeah.
Johnson,
Who I
exactly.
love we
Windex
never
for
see, by the
aftershave,
way.
Yeah.
Windex's aftershave was one of my favorite moments in the entire movie.
And also when Michael makes the crack about stuffing Mr. Johnson.
Yes. Can we also talk about Laddie for a moment?
Oh,
The Michael
creepy.
Jackson jacket.
Creepy kid.
Yes, incredibly creepy. But the fact that have you seen Laddie on the back of the milk cart?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, Laddie has to be a nickname because who actually names their child Laddie? That's the question. But nevertheless, creepy kid, very creepy.
That high forehead just screams Chucky.
Yes. I actually just watched the first 2 episodes of the new Chucky TV series on Sci-Fi the other day, and good stuff. Good stuff.
Oh.
Yep.
So speaking of kids, how do we feel about the Frog Brothers?
Oh, yes. My God. So much of the DNA of the show Supernatural can be traced back to the Frog Brothers. They are the Winchesters definitely got their personality from that in certain ways. But also, I love the fact that they're just straight up nerds more than anything else that just so happen to know enough about, vampire lore to, hunt them, as it were.
Yeah. But I have to wonder if they didn't see something at one point to make them go this route, or they just heard stories. Because in some ways, when they're fighting everybody, they're a little bit shocked and, oh crap, this is way worse than we thought.
Right.
But they still sort of know what they're talking about in some ways.
You get the sense that they're aware of what's going on, but they've never had any actual visceral experiences with vampires.
Yeah.
But I remember I saw this the first time when I was a kid with my parents watched it, and my parents loved it as like a camp movie. I remember them laughing at it and really enjoying it. But the two brothers, just first of all, the parents in the corner, their whole approach, I couldn't turn away because it's so ridiculous. But you kind of know people like this in your life, like especially if you travel in the circles we've traveled in, where they're not completely off the mark. Like there's something to it. You know, guys, what I'm saying? Like they're.
Oh yeah.
It's and you take like that. People, like when you think about people who like, and I was sometimes like this when I was younger, who are so deadly serious about the business of geekdom. Right?
Oh my God, yes.
And then you take that and you just move it over a little bit and apply it to being a vampire hunter, and it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Talking of characters who have the Frog Brothers DNA in them, I thought immediately of Dermot Fichtel from the Venture Brothers.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I do think the show's creators, in one of the commentary tracks for one of the DVD sets, said that the Frog Brothers were an inspiration for Dermot, but also like an actual person that they knew when they were kids. And as they said, lots of people know people like that.
Yeah.
And because they're out there, as Chris was just saying. So the Frog Brothers in turn are based on an actual type of really super intense nerd that exists in nature, as it were.
By the way, Murd, I'd have to double check, but when they're talking about when they're sparring with Sam's character about comics, everything they say is wrong, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say it.
Like,
it's
there's
nice
no way,
that they
like-
name check things like Red Kryptonite and Lori Lamaris, but in this context, especially with the clearly like early '80s comics that they're holding, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Like you put a Batman 14 just out like on the shelf.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Even
no,
in the 80s.
1987, would you do that?
Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously, I just walk into the comic shop and there's Amazing Fantasy 15 just, sitting there,
Sure.
waiting to be picked up by a random 8-year-old. Like that's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
It's the mid 80s. They're available everywhere.
Yeah, 'cause
Exactly.
I remember as a kid, I was like, "Oh, that's so cool," and then as I got older, I'm like, "None of that sounds right, though. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
those issue numbers add up."
And at that time, by that time, I was getting Batman, and knowing that we were in the 400s, I'm like, 14, really? That just seemed odd.
Well, and if garlic doesn't actually matter, then that makes them saying things like "you better get yourself a garlic T-shirt" or "it's your funeral." Like
Right.
that makes it even funnier because, as we're saying, like they think they're experts, but they're clearly not.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of like the level of like the gross out factor of the film? Like I mentioned the scene at the fire pit, and then also when they go into the cave and they stab the vampire from Bill and Ted.
Oh yeah, and he explodes all
yeah.
over.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Totally gross.
Yeah. I mean, did you think it added, like, did you like that they went that way in the movie?
Yeah, because it wasn't over the top all the time. I mean, it was for that scene, and it scared the hell out of them. They all ran out of there, but they did what they wanted to do. They accomplished by killing one of the vampires and getting away because it was daylight. They couldn't get out of the cave because of the sunlight. So they did what they were supposed to do, but they made it a lot worse. They had to get ready for that night because all hell was going to break loose in a couple hours.
Well, as Kiefer Sutherland says, tonight. And I love, by the way, this is a great detail. They're hanging up like bats, and when he falls down, you see his feet are like bat feet.
Oh yeah,
essentially. Like they've given him like these lengthy nails. That was a great touch.
Yep. What were we going to say, Bird?
I was going to say that I thought that the use of gore was sparing and effective.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a couple of really, as Shane said, they used it. It wasn't wall to wall gore in this movie. They just every now and again, just to remind you that this is in fact a horror movie you're watching.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They'll unleash a little bit just to pay off what was kind of foreshadowed and promised in those early, elusive scenes where great use of the aerial shots of the vampires homing in on their prey from the air and then diving down, ripping roofs off cars, snatching victims up into the sky. But then in that scene where they attack the surf Nazis on the beach and bite into their skulls and rip limbs off, and that's when they show you a little bit of what the actual doings of vampires are. So
and also because remember in that scene, it's well done where Michael goes into like a fever because he's drawn to the mayhem as well, but he's able to stop himself. It's a great shot when the four vampires ascend the small hill with like flames behind them.
Yep. And they just kind of
Sutherland standing in the forefront, and he's just like, you must feed, and it's great. Like I'm a kid. I was like,
peer pressure.
Wow,
that's exactly what it is.
I've never seen it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and one of my other favorite scenes is when Michael is first drinking the blood, that eventually makes him half vampire.
Yes.
And just the look of like utter glee on Kiefer's face while what's the name of the bombshell again? The
Star.
Star. Thank you, Star. And Star is like, no, you're drinking blood, and he's just
like, yeah, whatever, sure,
whatever. I'm a teenager. I'm going to drink alcohol if I want to. And he just, chugs it back. Those were good.
And
times.
then the scene when he's in the house. This is also really well done. How they used Nanook, the dog.
Right. That's my favorite character, by the way.
And that was actually, I think, one of the scariest scenes in the film.
Right, because he's going to attack his own brother.
Yeah, Michael's going into a frenzy. He can't control himself, and the dog saves him, basically.
How about when Michael is hanging out the window while the mother's on the...
I feel for the mom. She's divorced. She's on a date. Seems like a nice guy. And then she's got to run home because the kids are having a problem.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a really, really nice head vampire.
And yet when he turns and he talks to her and he just becomes this grotesque vampire and sticks his tongue out, and he's like,
Yep.
And in comparison, his dog as well. Talking about the dog's movie,
Thorn.
Yeah, yep.
The Hounds of Hell.
Exactly.
Yeah, that when the dog is chasing her and tearing at her skirt, she's just able to get over the gate. That was also well done. There was there were great camp elements, but there were also some more chilling elements. As well. So and you also love. Did you got like Murd? Did you think, because it's the first time you've seen it, did you think the grandfather might be a vampire?
Didn't cross my mind even once.
Okay.
I know that that's a very popular fan theory, especially at the end where he gets the ginger ale, and you can't quite make out what's in the bottle. There's been theories that perhaps he himself was also half vampire, which is how he would know about the vampires in the first place. But
I never considered that.
See, I didn't think that's a good theory too. I just thought that the way they do the movie, when you see it the first time, they plant some kind of false clues that make you think maybe he is a vampire himself. I don't think he is, but but Murd made a great point. I'd love to know about, all right, Grandpa as a young man, was he like a vampire hunter? basically,
Hmm.
because he survived all this time. So, what are his tricks of the trade, so to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, his last name wasn't Van Helsing that we know of, but
Yeah.
that would certainly take it in a different direction.
So, what do we think of Max, the head vampire, and his role in the film?
Well, I liked him immediately as soon as we saw him. Chris, I'm glad to hear that you worked in a video store in your younger days, so you really appreciated the setting there. To me, video stores in exactly this period of history, like the mid to late 80s, they were fatally fascinating things to me. I would go in there, and it was sensually overwhelming, for one thing. And for another, I was always drawn inexorably to the horror section. And I can remember some of the background props that you could see in that video store on the boardwalk.
Yep.
The posters, the cardboard standee from Kiss of the Spider Woman. I saw all that stuff in my local video store back in the day. So I kind of naturally, to me, the video stores automatically inspire kind of a sense of menace. So if there was something that I was supposed to be perceiving about Max beyond that, it was lost on me because I was just too busy being freaked out by all the horror paraphernalia that would have been displayed around a place like that. But I liked the character as soon as he came on screen. He was unassuming. He was kind.
Which explains his ease of seduction for anything he would want.
Yep.
And then the big turnaround when it turns out that he actually is, the scary interloper that Sam is afraid he is. This frightening interloper that's coming in to steal his mother away. Shane mentioned the moment when he turned around and was suddenly in his vampire makeup, and kind of a jump scare moment. It's that reveal was kind of right out of classic EC comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
the kind of thing that's been ripped off by both non-EC horror comics and every other branch of popular culture, all the way on down to kids' cartoons for decades since.
And that was another good example. We were mentioning this before. Shane mentioned it, that the movie capitalizes on anxieties that a teen would feel, like if their parents are just divorced and then there's another man coming over to date your mother. Like when you think about it, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the show, so much of its greatness is because it is always capitalizing on those types of real world situations, but then putting that horror twist on them.
Sure.
And
allegories for adolescent life. That's
and the Lost Boys, I think, which came out before Buffy, but that I think they really, really captured that. And what makes it all the more, like, it's more tangible for the viewer, because like, well, I can relate to that. I know someone did, just without the bloodsuckers. But, and like when Sam's in his room and is like, Mom, I just want to step and read the comic. I'm like, God, that was me. Like, it's amazing. Like they really got so many nice moments of that age and that time period.
Yep.
God, I love this film.
Yeah. And so much of the personality is driven, by relationships in this, and it's connection more than anything else. Even the Frog Brothers, like, what they're able to pull off, to bond with their new friend, I think actually works incredibly nicely. Sam and the Frog Brothers, connect almost immediately over their bad comic book knowledge, and then eventually evolve into, them immediately believing him when, like, oh, there's a vampire. Oh, okay. Well, then I guess we're coming over.
We'll be right there.
We'll be right there.
But the relationship between Michael and Sam, I thought, was well realized too. Like you believe their connection. And that's good writing and good acting. I mean, this movie is very campy in many ways, but they really did a nice job, just in quick strokes, kind of establishing the rapport with these characters. Like when they're running around the house and kind of fooling around, and the tomfoolery, and they see the grandfather. I love how the grandfather has marijuana plants on the windowsill, and like not even hiding them. It's like 87,
knowing winking laugh over them.
Yep, and they're mocking him about that. And it's all those little touches really add to the world and make it just all the more, even though it's supernatural, making it believable.
Now, let's comment quickly on the fact that the director of this movie is Joel Schumacher. There are
in his heyday.
In his
late
heyday,
Joel Schumacher, yep.
There are Batman references dropped in the comic book store, and I'm thinking to myself, if only those had been the only Batman references that Joel Schumacher ever made. Like maybe we'd be better off. But there's redeemable qualities to the camp that is his Batman movies. It's just clearly not his best stuff. But I'm thinking to myself the entire time, this is the same Joel Schumacher.
Yeah. Well, okay.
There's
So
only
take that another direction. I just watched Knives Out again for like the 5th time.
That's so
Mhm.
And I
good.
can't believe that Ryan Johnson did that one, yet there's the guy that did that Star Wars movie too.
Yes, although I would say that The Last Jedi is an absolutely terrific movie, and I'm going to stick by that. But I think that I know opinions very much vary on The Last
That's
Jedi.
okay.
But I'd say directorially, I point to that because there is some excellent shot selection
Yeah.
in
yeah.
this movie. And I really can't say that about Batman and Robin for the most part. You know, like
No.
when I look at it, there's no specific shot other than us looking at their belts as they're putting on their belts over and over again. That says, you know, this was done for this specific reason. But there's staging in this that works excellently,
Yeah.
whether it be with the vampires or whether it be with the humans. There's some nice sweeping shots as well during the action
Well,
sequence.
and he uses the amusement park very effectively.
Oh yeah,
In the background of all those scenes.
hmm
most definitely.
I can remember finding out after watching Batman and Robin that he directed this, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. I watched this and think that it just can't be the same guy. It just can't be.
Yeah.
There's just
You have
not
to remember
not a
though
chance.
that those Batman films were coming. They were already an established franchise.
Oh,
coming from
sure.
a different director,
Mhm.
and you know, there's a whole. That's
Oh.
such a loaded situation.
Yeah, there's a whole.
Um,
To me, there's a whole side of the studio interfering with all of that as well. on the
Plus, as we
Batman
know
stuff.
from his own interviews, Schumacher came to that movie with a very different vision,
Mhm.
right, than what Tim
Yeah.
Burton had, and you saw that. Now, I'll say this: Shane will especially appreciate this. I just had on recently St. Elmo's Fire,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
which he also directed. Which again
Mhm.
I mean, you talk about a quintessential '80s film.
Yeah.
That's one of them, and he directed that. He also directed a remake of a French film, Cousins, with Ted Danson, which I am very fond of, also.
Oh,
Um,
wonder
which
if I
is
saw
it's a
that.
very it's like a very low key, like
Huh.
you know, family comedy. So the guy like did a variety of films.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other movies he's done that, like I know he did a war film with Colin Farrell called Tigerland, which I haven't seen, which I think was Colin Farrell's breakthrough role, actually.
He also did The
Um,
Incredible Shrinking Woman with Lily Tomlin.
Oh,
I've
love
never
that
seen
movie.
that. I've never seen
Oh.
that, actually.
That's a fun movie. 1979, 1980,
Yep.
maybe 81.
And Donner was going to direct this originally. If Donner was the executive producer of this, but had it not been delayed a couple of times, and then I believe he moved on to Lethal Weapon instead. He was originally tapped to be the director.
Yeah, Lethal Weapon came out the same year. That's right.
Exactly.
By the way, before we forget, let's talk about the musical choices in this film.
Oh my God, yes. Cry, little sister.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's so over the top, but it works.
It is one of the it's one of the like the score tracks that's repetitive that I think to myself that would not happen today, and yet it works so well in context for Lost Boys. Like
That's the best way to put it. When you have like the creepy children's chorus, right?
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Especially when David's dying and they play that
right.
in the background, it gets creepier and creepier as they get softer and softer and a little bit slower, a little bit slower.
Mhm.
But it was the music was an interesting hodgepodge. We were talking about before the recording. A lot of the songs are covers.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I mean, "People Are Strange" to me is one of the greatest songs out of the Doors catalog. It's covered by Echo and the Bunnymen.
Mhm.
It's a good
who
cover,
were-
to be fair.
It
What's
is.
that?
It's a good cover.
Oh, I like the cover, yeah, but
Yeah.
it's they were a major alternative band, of course, in the '80s. And then you've got well, the whole Capello thing is a whole nother. We've already discussed that, but you got a little In Excess in there at one point.
Oh, yeah.
You've got you guys mentioned the Elton John cover at the end.
Roger Daltrey's
Yep.
like I'm sitting there after watching it the first time, and I'm sort of like zoning out because we're in the credits, and then all of a sudden I start hearing Roger Daltrey, and I'm like, Roger Daltrey, and then he starts "Don't Let the Sun." I'm like, what? You're covering Elton John? That happened? And yeah, it's a wonderful cover of the song.
Great
it's
singer.
He makes it his own. It's completely different.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I love the soundtrack in this movie. It just-
What songs am I forgetting? There were more than that. But,
The Beach Punks got murdered to the tune of Run DMC's
That's
version
right.
of Walk This Way.
that's
Yep.
right.
Mhm.
Yep. Which was also, I thought, really effective the way they used it in that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Because they show that the surf Nazis like indulging in their bacchanal, and at the same time, the vampires are like getting into their fervor to attack them, and they're going back and forth. It was well done. I remember how affected I was by that as a kid when I saw it for the first time. So.
And honestly, just part of me just continues to be very disappointed that we didn't get sequels immediately.
Absolutely.
That there weren't sequels, like 4 or 5 years afterwards while they were still young, that still would have made sense, like canonically, rather than straight to video like 20 years later. Like,
well, Ian, this movie did well when it came out, didn't it? I think it did well.
Let me check the numbers, but
I'm always interested in that. But
it was a box office success, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Well, and while you do that, two things I'll say is, one, when we were talking about Joel Schumacher and his directing catalog, I still watch all the Batman movies, all of them. I still enjoy some element of each of them. Doesn't matter how bad it is. I still enjoy part of it, and I'll still watch it when it's on, or throw it on a DVD or something. So it's not like I hate them. I'm surprised by them. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, the other thing just left my head.
Well, while you think of it, the budget for this movie was $8.5 million. It made $32.2 million.
Right.
The funniest part is that back in the day, you could still make money like that and not premiere at number 1. It premiered at number 2 at the box office.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what it was. So you're talking about sequels. I completely agree. I really thought we were going to get a sequel for this almost right away.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, and I watched all of these, mind you, we got License to Drive with the Corys. We got Dream a Little Dream with the Corys.
Which I love in a bizarre way.
Yeah, absolutely love in a bizarre way. There was another one I thought that the two of them did. Like, I followed them in any movie that they did because I got a kick out of, no matter how stupid the movie was, I got a kick out of the two of them acting together for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Dream a Little Dream. I can't tell you how many times I watched that.
I mean, the movie that movie is so weird. I mean, they got Jason Robards.
That's it. Jason Robards.
Harry Dean Stanton.
Yep.
What's her name? Great actress. Oh hell, she's in Twin Peaks. I'm failing, but that if you guys have never seen that, if you want to see another quintessential 80s film, that's just weird.
And that's a little bit
more.
It is quintessential 80s, but it's a little bit on the fringe more than like Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, 16 Candles,
it's definitely on the fringe.
all that stuff. But yeah, to get Jason Robards to do it just blew me away.
Well, and of note, there was a sequel in comic book form that came out of Vertigo in I think it's 2016.
Really?
It wasn't very long ago.
Written by Tim Seeley, with artwork by Scott Godlewski. And I think it may have even been mentioned on a previous episode because it was not that long ago. It got released on August 15th, 2017.
I'm pretty sure it was.
And that collects all volume issues 1 through 6 of the miniseries, and it has the Frog Brothers and their sisters in it as well. Because as said, I think the original sequel, The Lost Girls, was going to focus on the sisters as well. So go figure.
Huh.
Yep.
I'd like to read that without a mention in the previews episode that month.
Yeah, I almost guarantee that if we find the previews from that specific era, it'll be there. But it has the Emerson brothers in it and the Frog Brothers, and the Frog Bells, I believe, is what the the sisters are known as. So there we go. And hey, it's Tim Seeley, and Tim Seeley knows vampires.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, gentlemen, what would we rank this? What do we give it? How many frickin' swears? Chris, I think I know what you're going to say.
Oh, it's 5 on every level. What a touchstone.
Yep, I agree.
I'm gonna give it a solid 4 out of 5. I think it's terrific and near perfect, if not for a few inconsistencies in their lore. That I'll just leave it at that.
I'd wanted to give a shout out to the set design before I move on to final rankings here. It's everywhere you look, not just the boardwalk and the shops on the boardwalk, but also like the lair of the vampires and even Grandpa's house with its profusion of taxidermic weirdness. It was just an explosion of like 80s postmodern eclecticism everywhere you looked. The vampire's lair with its giant poster of Jim Morrison and other things. It's just encrusted all over with mid to late 20th century pop culture apocrypha. And it's just another very 80s kind of aesthetic flair. And this was made at about the same time Pee-wee's Playhouse was. And they're cut from the same visual cloth, I have to say.
Yep.
Well done, sir.
And as to my frickin' Swears, I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know, if it's fun, I can see myself watching it again. But if I'm going to start like an annual ritual reviewing, as Ian has proposed to do, you know, vampiric content notwithstanding, I think I would choose not Halloween but Midsummer's Night to watch this over again because it's so beach and boardwalk. This is going to be a spooky summer thing.
Good point,
I
Murd.
can see it.
Yep. No, completely agree with that. Yeah, I mean, hey, whatever tradition you'd like to bring forth, make it so.
Make it so.
And speaking of tradition, we have just enough time to do this.
Oh,
Oh my.
Hayes Levinstein.
Yes.
So stunned I forgot to air harp.
And then out of nowhere, it's Muddle the Murd. And then out of nowhere, Adam explains how.
Okay, well, folks, Muddle the Murd is a trivia competition that we do at odd times here on our podcast. It involves participation from you, the listeners. You get to play along. If you'd like to get your chance to muddle the Murd, you'll need to send in a group of 3 comics trivia questions to ask of me, the Murd. There must be 1 Marvel question, 1 DC question, 1 question about some third publisher, and they also need to break down time-wise to 1 question about comics pre-1970, 1 about comics between 1970 and 2000 inclusive, and 1 about comics post-2000. Don't forget to include the answers, or we won't know if I've been muddled or not. Ian, the Quizmaster, will ask your 3 questions to me on the air, and if I cannot answer any one of them correctly, if I get all 3 of them wrong, you will have muddled the Murd, and I will then pay my own pocket money to mail to you a prize of some kind or other. And that's kind of a question mark to me right now because I'm in a different part of the house from where the supply of prizes are, so I have no idea what a potential muddler would be playing for, but it'll be for something.
Fair enough, indeed. And as a reminder, it must be about the comic itself, and it must be a relevant part of the comic itself. We can't get questions like, what color were Peter Parker's shoelaces in Amazing Spider-Man #4 or something like that.
Or what brand of soda pop is advertised on the inside back cover.
Exactly. No ads and nothing too minute.
Probably Royal Crown Cola. Right?
Yeah.
If we're talking an old like 40s Captain Marvel issue, sure.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
entirely possible.
Yep. Well, this one is by Brianna Driver, and she has this to say: "Hi, my name is Bree. After recently becoming a major comic fan through means of my dad's collection, I started to listen to your guys' podcast and watch your videos. They're awesome. This will be my first attempt at muddling the Murd with the knowledge I've compiled so far, so get ready." And we are indeed.
Welcome to the gang.
Indeed.
Here.
Bree. Yep. Happy to have you. All right. And Bree's first question comes from Marvel before 1970. In Spider-Man #5, I assume she means Amazing Spider-Man #5, other than the Vulture, what villain does Peter Parker / Spider-Man encounter?
Number 5. All right, this is going way back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I've read this comic, but it's going back into the mists of time here. Probably when I was like 13 or 14 years old when Matt let me borrow his Marvel Masterworks of the first few.
Matt again. It all goes back to Matt.
Sure seems that way. Who else was around during the Vulture's early appearances? Well, I'm going to say the Chameleon.
Any guesses from the Peanut Gallery?
It's Amazing Spider-Man 5, you said?
#5, yep.
And who's the other villain in it?
Other than the Vulture, yes. Who is the other villain that Peter encounters?
Oh. See, I'm trying to think of, okay, would they have put in a new villain, or was it were they recycling a villain that already had appeared? Damn it.
Well,
I'm gonna say Dr. Doom?
The correct answer, The Terrible Tinkerer.
Oh,
Oh,
that's right. I can see the
sure.
cover now. The Tinkerer. Yes.
Yep.
Nope.
Indeed.
There you go.
Phineas Mason.
Good question.
Yep. All right, let's move on to 1970 to 2000 DC. In JLA Tower of Babel, when
Oh, classic.
Batman's terrific. When Batman's plans to take down the Justice League get in Ra's al Ghul's hands, which JLA member gets taken down first and how?
Oh.
Oh, geez. Oh, boy. First and how? Honestly, I can't remember a single one of the specific means that Batman had noted in his little dossier for all the different people. I want to say Martian Manhunter, but I have no idea how.
Okay, you did get Martian Manhunter correct.
Yep.
And
It
on
involved fire, right?
yes, it was a deliberate forest fire.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay, I probably would have guessed throwing like Grecian fire on him, but so that would have been wrong anyway.
Yep.
Good
Knew it was
question.
fire,
That's a
but I
classic story. Oh.
Couldn't figure out what.
Yep.
Retreat, Superman! Retreat!
All right, we're down to our final question here after 2000. And you have a choice, Murd, and I am going to give you that choice. It's between manga and Dark Horse. Which would you prefer?
I think I would prefer Dark Horse.
Fair enough. Here we go. How many issues does the series Umbrella Academy have? The original Umbrella Academy. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Oh, Bree, I think you're going to have some kind of prize sent to you. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what that's going to be, but it'll probably be something. Because
Boy, that was a sales pitch.
it'll be one of the things that our friend Big John Morrissey provided us a while ago. I'll pick out something nice from that pile.
Excellent.
But yeah, this is assuming I don't pull the correct number out of my nether regions, which of course I won't.
No, well, I wouldn't say that. You've come up with some good ones.
Yeah,
to
come on,
figure
man.
it out.
Don't underestimate yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not. I know that I don't own more than one or two of the issues of Umbrella Academy myself. The number that keeps beeping in my brain is 27.
Ooh, you came so close, sir. 24.
Wow! Oh,
Wow. Jeez.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
You ever take an arc? You know.
Excellent. Well, welcome to Comic Geek Speak,
Yes.
Bree, and
Yes.
congratulations on
Wow.
your successful muddle attempt. The other question would have been a My Hero Academia question, and I don't believe that would have been in your wheelhouse, Murd. So,
It's not one of the manga franchises with which I'm familiar.
yep.
I probably should sometime because I know it's very popular and it's got a lot of good superhero tropiness in it. But
Yep. I guarantee Katie Cook and her clan would have been able to answer the question, but not any of us for sure at the moment.
yeah, I know Jamie Hatton's stepchild would have too, because I met her at Chris's place at one of his annual gatherings just before the pandemic hit.
That's
and she
right.
was wearing a My Hero Academia inspired shirt of some kind.
Nice.
I had to ask her what it was, and she explained it, and I said, My Hero Academia, I've heard of that. And that's just the extent of my knowledge. So, yeah, I had a much better shot with the Umbrella Academy. But either way, congratulations, Bree. You have muddled the Murd. Welcome to the CGS listenership. We're happy to have you, and you will have a prize of some kind in your hands before too much longer.
Yes, indeed. And we'll
That's
be
awesome.
emailing you for your address, and we'll go ahead and get that sent off. So congratulations yet again, Bree. Job well done. And that, gentleman, is a job well done all around. And
Here, here.
indeed, a happy Halloween to all of you
Yes.
out there in CGS land. I'll be walking around with some of Martha's cousins sometime this weekend, so that'll be super fun and good times. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this sucker up. Once again, we're sponsored by you, the listeners, over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. And a reminder that anyone who is a patron, if you're hearing these words and you want to listen to the next episode a little bit early, just go ahead and donate whatever amount you'd like to the show and become a patron. And you will have access to that episode with Comfort Love and Adam Withers and myself and Chris Nautis, as we shoot the shit in a hotel room and talk comics just the way we like it. So patreon.com/comicgeekspeak for that. And once again, thank you so much for your continued support.
Thank you.
of the show.
Thank you.
All right. And Shane, We are ready for you in just a moment here.
Shoot that bolt, brother.
All right, hold on 1 second here. I realized I forgot I was still sharing. So here we are. I just saw that picture of a vampire for a very, very long time.
It's been the Frog Brothers for a half hour.
All right, over to you, Shane.
All right. Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com. To send us an email, the address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave us a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com. Look us up on youtube.com/comicgeekspeak. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, send in your Muddle the Murds. Look at what happened with Bree being a new listener and send in a Muddle the Murd and boom, Muddle the Murd. Thanks to everyone who contributes to the episodes. We could not do it without you, and we certainly appreciate all that you do for us. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
Cry, little sister. Come to your brother. Chinese sister.
Couldn't think of any better way to end it. And it was only about 16 seconds, so it shouldn't even get hit on YouTube. So there you go.
That's a plus.